news of the day, Browns, obviously, as they're getting ready. At 2-6, they're getting ready to play the Bills. And Paul, nationally, this is probably the biggest disappointment for a Cleveland sports team on a national level since back in 1987. Something you were very familiar with is, the Indians with Joe Carter and Corey Schneider on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Indian Uprising. And how's that for a little throwback look? But, it's very similar. Everybody kind of thought the Indians were on the verge of getting it done and taking over. Same thing they thought about the Browns. And it was a disappointment that it kind of just lingers, week after week with you.
Definitely. It was the only thing about that 1987 is everybody on the team and when it was covering the team, and even the people that were running the team knew that was a horrendous mistake. They had no pitching. They had a great offense, but they had no pitching, and I think they lost 10 of their first 12 games right out of the gate. It was right down in the tank, and so they left no doubt that what kind of season was going to be.
So what you're saying is the people involved, unlike what we're dealing with, I think the Browns thought they were getting ready to make a step forward.
I think everybody bought into the Browns, and it's hard not to with the talent they put together and the playmakers they brought in, and just the vibe and how they finished last year.
Yeah, and it just goes to show football is the ultimate team game. You really do need all 11 guys on each side of the ball kind of working together.
Yeah, you have to exactly. You can't shortchange any one area because that area usually creeps up and bites you.
Well, one of the things that the Browns are trying to figure out is exactly how to get Odell-Beckham-Jr. more involved. Todd Monken, offensive coordinator, not the play caller, though, spoke about that out in Berea today.
Again, I would refer back to some of it is that. Some of it is what they're doing. Some of it is obviously what we're doing. And I'm talking about collectively, schematically. It's not always, it's not like we're purposely looking one way or we're looking away from somebody. So obviously, when you have that few targets to somebody like that, then you've got to take a look at it and say, how do we get our playmakers the ball? And that's it, every part of the field. That's really not just there, but obviously with our struggles there, then we've looked at that and we'll continue to look at it as we move forward.
So after all that, I'm going to ask you about another guy not getting the ball, and that's Higgins. You're seeing him for the first time. We saw what he did last year. What do you see in him that's keeping him from at least getting ahead of Callaway, who's making mistakes every single game?
Well, first off, it's tough for Rashard, just the way the year started. And in terms of, I thought had a really good preseason camp and then had a real good start to the year, and then he got hurt. And so that, I wouldn't say it was a setback, but it certainly doesn't help when you're not practicing, you're not out there, so you start to, obviously last year they also didn't have Odell. So that's part of it as well. You had some other guys who were more role players. So all of a sudden a player's role changes and he's trying to find a niche, and we are too. So it's a little more complicated than that, but obviously he's a guy that Baker has real comfort in, and we do have to get him more involved. We do. You're right. And have him be a bigger factor in what we do. Again, there's only so much you can do. Again, like I said before, one ball, but it has been frustrating, I'm sure, for him and for us.
And they're here, Todd Monken, offensive coordinator, trying to figure out how to get the ball in Odell Beckham Jr.'s hands. Paul, as a beat reporter, how do you weigh asking a question like that has to be asked, and is it the way you present it? How do you deal with it? Because you're going to have to deal with these guys day in and day out. How do you handle something like that?
It's an art, and I've seen guys do it, a couple different ways. Some guys just kind of jump in with both feet and, run the risk of, the press conference blowing up, and that's the only question that gets asked. Or, you kind of I like to try to work in gradually, throw them a couple softballs, and then get to the question that you really want to ask. It's just, I think you have to play it by ear. You have to know who you're talking to and who will, how he'll respond to you.
There's a perception that the media is against the team, and you can't, as a guy that covers them day in and day out, you have to be objective and you have to be willing to ask those questions. And as long as you don't do it in a demeaning way, I think most of the people understand what you're doing.
Right, the players know what you're going to ask. I mean, a guy, if this is in football, if the shortstop makes 3 errors, he knows people are going to be at his locker wanting to ask him what happened. So, and if the guy's a professional, even if he isn't, he's got to know that some heat is coming his way. And it's just how you approach it. I think it's a little dangerous to go, they have a 10-minute cooling off period before every game, after every game, they 10 minutes before they let the media in, and it's been probably a half hour since the game has ended. So usually a guy is calmed down by then, and he's gotten over his temper tantrum, and you can talk to him. You're usually able to talk to him. Now sometimes a guy just doesn't show, and then you wait until the next day and talk to him.
And as a beat reporter, you want the team to do well because then interest, by and large, generates, and more people want to hear what you have to say, and you can go and do all the different stories that you want to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to cover a team that's winning than a team that's in the tank. But, sometimes better stories come out of a team that's struggling. I mean, Jim Murray, the great Los Angeles Times columnist, always said he doesn't root for a team, he roots for the story, and whatever is the best storyline.
Yeah, that's very valid, and it makes a whole lot of sense.